So, the sixth thing is something that we bumped into. I'm mentioning it here not because we have it fully worked out or understand it entirely, but I wanted to make sure that we are communicating this early so that people can give their thoughts on this. There might be a need. No, let me phrase this differently. Um, as some of you might know, in Fabricator, everything is preceded with a letter to indicate what kind of thing a certain numbered resource is. Specifically, if you have a task, I believe which is an issue in Gitea, a task typically starts with a T and then it has a number behind it, which indicates which task it is. Same thing with D, differential, which is basically a pull request. Pull request has a number behind it. Now, a task and a pull request can both have the same number but still be a different thing. So, for example, T23 can exist and D23 can exist, and they are different things because one is a task and the other is a differential. This is partly true for Gitea as well, except internally certain things are actually the same data type. Not so much between issues and pull requests, I believe, but I have been warned that there might be certain things that we need to renumber in such a way that they won't collide with each other. Now, or that we actually are able to put them in the database without overwriting the original one with that already exists with that number, which is actually a different original data type, but well, you get my point. Let's not complicate things too much with the way that I'm explaining it. Essentially, it might mean that we will need to renumber certain things, and we are kind of in luck. I believe that in 1.17 point something Gitea version, support was included to have numbers not have to be contiguous, meaning that we can actually just say, look, if we have two types which basically occupy the same number space, and we have a 23 here and a 23 here, let's just add a million to this 23 and make it 1,000,023 and assign it there, without us having to fill up the space in between. In earlier versions, there was a requirement to actually make sure that all numbers were sequential, and you wouldn't leave blank space between two types of numbered resources, which would have really been a bit tricky, doable but tricky. We could, of course, say, look, first insert these, and then once you have a pointer for where to go from, we take that as an offset. We add 60,000 to everything from here if there were 60,000 minus one objects of the other type inserted earlier. Now, being able to just say, let's take a million makes it easier to actually make a lookup table beforehand. We can actually just say in the code, like, if you're inserting this, just add a million and you won't get any collisions, no problems. And in fact, Gitea should be smart enough to understand later, like when we finally have a million of the first resource and it hits 1,000,001 here, it will just say, no, this is already occupied, I'll get the first one be after that, that's accessible. All fine, all great. There's another reason why we might want to do this, which is if we want to there are going to be resources on the internet, specifically maybe links from the DevTalk blogs or other places where people have cut and paste the URL of a ticket, an issue or task or whatever in developer.blender.org. So basically, if you now go to a task in developer.blender.org, it will say in your URL bar, developer.blender.org/T and then a number. Same thing for all the other resources. They're very easy to look up. If you just look at the first letter that you get in your URL after the main name, you look at the type, and then you look at the number, and you're able to do other things with it and go to the task or whatever it is. This is powerful, especially if we would like to later say, let's make an Nginx rule or an Apache rule, which catches these types of direct navigational links and redirects them to the equivalent on projects.blender.org, so that we can actually just keep those links working and not have them break, and get people to the resource that they were looking for in the first place. Because that's the danger that we now have by moving to a different forge and a different URL. We lose the ability to keep sustaining these types of links that people have used to refer to in documentation from Wiki, in DevTalk topics, any kind of permanent resource. Does not automatically change all their URLs just because we move to a different forge. Making a couple of simple redirect rules that would catch these types of resources and redirect them to the new place is a very powerful and useful thing to do. So input is kind of required as to how we would like this to work, or rather think about this. Would we like to have an offset or a prefix with a no prefix with a letter is not possible in Gitea, so that's out. I'm kind of asking for input here. Like, do we want this functionality? Would this be useful? Would we be fine with just an offset of whatever we need to have so that there's no gaps, or would we prefer to have like distinctive offsets for these types of things if we do end up needing them, in such a way that it's like 1,000,000 for the first type of thing that might overlap, and 2,000,000 for the second type of thing that might overlap, so that we can not just have a static mapping. Something to think about. Comments welcome.